4 weeks to let it all hang out. 4 weeks until playoffs. Oh, it's starting to get a little bit stressful. For some of us, anyway. I do hate to say it, but we officially have to eliminate a couple of teams from playoff contention. With 4 games to go, Cody, Brian, RIP. Um, Even closing with consecutive wins will not get you into the playoffs. It was a good run, though, and I'm not being facetious. Cody doubled his wins from last year, and we still have a few weeks to play spoiler, so he could really improve upon what he did last year. Brian B Money has already matched Rob's win total from last year, taking over Rob's ghetto squad. Um, and again, can still squeak out some more wins before everything is all said and done. And in fact, I hope you do, because playing spoiler is great. And it would be fun to shit on some of these people's hopes and dreams. So, do your best. I know you will. Looming on the horizon, um, we do have Joe and Brent next on the chopping block. Not officially eliminated yet. Losses this week will certainly seal your doom. Probably mine as well, if we're being honest. I've got 5 wins. There's a sliver, a bit more hope from my squad, sitting at 5 and 6, but a loss will essentially kill it for me. So it really kind of makes me bitter about my last couple of losses. You know, one against the Goats, one against Brian. It's really, shitty when you can pinpoint the one play that cost you an entire matchup. Um, Against Matt, I basically can pinpoint that to Rashawn Gary had 2 sacks in the same drive, both called back to penalties, which was upsetting. Um, Not as a Rams fan. I was fine with it as a Rams fan, but as a fantasy owner, I was a little bit pissed. Like, yeah, go ahead, beat the shit out of Brett Rippon. I don't care. You know, who's Brett Rippon? Screw that guy. Um, or with Brian, it was watching that one touchdown run by Jameer Gibbs late in the fourth quarter. Anyway, I'm not bitter now. I'm excited. I'm salivating at the potential to not only make the playoffs, sitting in the 6th spot, but also just to play a little bit of spoiler for anybody that I might beat in the coming weeks. Knock on wood. I'm feeling good about it. All right. Um, let's circle back to all this in a minute, though. Okay, we'll take a look at some more things. Right now, I want to talk about side missions. And you may be saying side missions, but Ben, you ignored us last week. You left us out in the cold. We didn't have a side mission. Yeah, maybe that was intentional. Maybe I was out of town and didn't have the wheel of doom to spin, and so I just kind of forgot about it all. Um, it doesn't matter. I don't care because we're gonna do 2 side missions this week, and we don't even need the spinny wheel. I want to pull the spinny wheel up just to look at it, think about what could have been. But no spinning wheel this week because what we're going to do, we're going to call it the Turducken Award. Okay? In honor of Thanksgiving and John Madden and 6-legged turkeys and all that good stuff. What we'll do is we're going to give side mission awards, plural, to the highest scoring individual players. Yes, one offense, one defense, highest scoring player on whatever roster. It could, hopefully, it'll be 2 different squads. It could be the same squad. I don't know. But yeah, the highest scoring offensive player on the week and the highest scoring defensive player on the week will earn side mission wins for those 2 players and their respective owners. Right? How about that? That sounds good. I think that's a nice way to recoup what could have been last week. And it feels, sort of Turkey Day appropriate. Thinking about the turducken. So there's that. Without being uber scientific, to my earlier point when we were talking about being able to pinpoint one play or one bench swap that would have made your week, I had to thinking, is there a player that would have made a difference for me? Did I screw the pooch early on and drop what could have been a week winner? Short answer is yes, but I figured what I would do is take a look at everybody's team, week 1 to week 12. Who were you missing in week 12 that you're going, damn, I really needed that guy? Results may vary. So let's start with myself. I think my biggest whiff was probably Kayvon Thibodeau. I tried for a couple weeks, dumped his ass. Then he got a sack. I think he had like a 12-point game, so I picked him back up, let it ride for another couple weeks with results, and then I dropped his ass. And then, of course, he went thermonuclear, and he had like 5 sacks and a forced fumble in 2 games, and I missed it. So that's great. And D end has easily been my weakest spot all year, so why not? And granted, it was 2 weeks, but I think he put up 52 points in those 2 weeks. Which, yeah, who couldn't use an extra 52 points? I know I certainly could have. How about Ryan's squad? Ryan's actually had a pretty good run, a pretty solid, consistent team this year. The moves that he's made, just looking at week 1 and week 12, seem to be pretty good in general. If we had to pinpoint it to a player, though, I would say that it would probably be David Montgomery. He missed a chunk of games in the middle of the year. Yeah, sure. And I think in the grand scheme of things, Ryan ended up with Mike Evans, which is, yeah, probably good. Um, but right now, yeah, I think, David Montgomery putting up like 16 points last week and 17 points this week. I'm sure Ryan wouldn't mind having that on his team right now. Yeah. So the other answer might be Mark Andrews. Of course, that's injury related and that just happened. So maybe that's cheating a little bit. But it does leave a pretty big hole to fill when tight end 3 is out for the rest of the year. If only someone would have made a reasonable trade for like one of your 10 DBs for a tight end. That probably would have worked out well for you. But no, that's fine. It's okay. Moving right along. How about Coral? Coral pacing the league, doing a pretty good job of it. 8-3. Hard to say that Carl has missed on any players on his team. Looking at week 1, I said maybe Zach Moss. Zach Moss blew up in the middle of the year. He's fallen off now with the return of Jonathan Taylor and kind of a meh state of the Indy offense in general. But if you had Zach Moss in like week 4 or week 5, when he blew up with like 20, 30 points, maybe you'd be 9-2 right now. Maybe you'd even be 10-1 if you had a couple of those splash games. So regrets might be strong, but maybe if you still had Zach Moss, you'd be feeling a little bit better where you're at. I don't think he feels bad with where he's at anyway. Big runner up. You really haven't changed your team. And I really struggled with any change that would have impacted your squad. So, for the sake of just making up a bullshit answer, I said Cooper Kupp pre hamstring injury, which is cheating because Cooper Kupp had a hamstring injury going into the year and missed the first 4 weeks. So, oh well. I tried. I had to think of something. I'm sorry. That's all I could come up with. Brentley! The biggest one, I think, is Chris Jones. And maybe that's a cop out just because of this last week, where if you would have had Chris Jones, you would have had the win over Carl. So yeah, I cheated a little bit, but I'm sure seeing 24 points sitting out on the waiver wire right now makes you go, God damn. Made me go, God damn. because who wouldn't like to see Carl lose? Maybe Carl. I don't know. Joey Jojo Junior Shabadoo. Um, Outside of some unfortunate injuries, there's probably not a lot of regret in the player movement department. Um, I mean, knowing you, it's probably Zeke, right? I bet you miss having Zeke on your squad for all the wrong reasons. But if you're collecting Cowboys, I'm sure you want Zeke back too. So, or maybe you're just really upset you missed out on Deron Bland. Not that you ever had him on your team, but I bet you wish that you had him on your team. So there's that. That's another cop out answer, but that's the best I can come up with when I look these things over. Walker, the Chitty Gang, just Chitty now. That's fine. Um, Surprisingly, super consistent core all year, and that's been like a pretty big unsung hero for Walker. The one thing I looked at, and I know you swung for the fences, and I admire that. That Adam Thielen trade where you gave up Chris Olave for Adam Thielen. I bet right now you'd probably rather have Chris Olave back. Um, but again, admire the taking the shot. It was looking really good for Thielen, and it could come back. But he's had a few down weeks now, and yeah, Olave looked pretty good the last couple weeks. So there's that. Cody has been the league chaos agent. It does seem to bite Cody probably more often than not. But I'm not lying if I didn't say I admired the gusto of making awful trades and hoping that any of them stuck. Um, the fun answer for Cody's squad, looking at what he had week one, the fun answer is Kareem Hunt. Um, Not only because he blew over half of his free agent Bucks wad on Kareem Hunt, but then after he dropped him, he actually became relevant and has put up points the last few weeks. But that's kind of the cheating fun answer. The real answer is probably Mike Evans. And I know he got David Montgomery and a couple other players in that trade. Um, but right now, Mike Evans, he's like a wide receiver 10 in the entire league, surprisingly, amazingly. Baker Mayfield has him on pace to go over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns again, which would make 10 years straight with 1,000 yards receiving for Mike Evans, which is wild. So, um, yeah, who wouldn't want that on their team? Uh, and again, I never would have predicted it for the life of me, so I can't even pretend like it was a bad move or anything because, yeah, good on you for making it. The goats. The goats, much like Walker, have cobbled together a really solid season. And in the goats' case, he's been battling injuries all year long. I think this is like the third year that Matt has just been terribly afflicted by the injury bug on his team. This year, he's not letting it hold him back. Um, and if I weren't directly competing with you for what hopefully will end up being a playoff spot, I'd be cheering you on. But right now, you're kind of a prick, and I just am hoping to leapfrog you. So there's that. But looking at week one and looking at now, and it's funny because you have this guy on your team now, but Donta Foreman, who you had the first week or 2 weeks, and then you let him go. And then he became relevant when every single player on the Bears offense got hurt and they had to activate him. So yeah, his best weeks are probably behind him at this point in the season. Now that you have him back on your team, but I bet you wish you had him when he was effective. So there's that. Otherwise, it's Nico Collins, um, and yeah, it'd be good to have the C.J. Stroud, Nico Collins stack. That's hard. Stroud stack. You got to be careful with that one. So one of those two, I think, would really turn the tides in your favor at this point in the season. You'd probably be looking at 7 or 8 wins yourself. So anyway, finally, B Money, our last guy that really, it's not me taking the piss out on him. Um, where he's at now with where he was week one, I don't see a single player that is off of his roster that I think he wishes he had back. So, uh, which is really to say, hey, great job with player management. You cut the trimmed the fat, got rid of a bunch of bullshit, and none of it has really seemed to hurt your standings. So, kudos to you for good roster management. How about that? So yeah, that's kind of a non super critical thinking. Where's everybody's team at? Who's missing out? Long story short, I don't think anyone's really missing out that much. It's been pretty tight all across the league. So good job. Looking at the schedule really quick, wanted to do this fast. So, week 12. Um, where are our big time matchups? Well, Ryan versus the Goats. Obviously, if I want to make up some ground, I need the Goats to lose. We also have big runner up versus Brian. Um, I need to see big runner up drop another couple games here to keep the hopes alive, not only for myself but also for the Goats if the Goats is going to make it happen. So a lot of attention going here. The last couple few weeks of the season are good though because the top guys play each other, um, and the bottom guys are all kind of duking it out down here too. So uh, it's going to be really a nail biter. I feel like come week 15, we might see like a three-way tie for that third or fourth playoff spot. Um, so yeah, I mean, keep grinding, guys. And Brian, Cody, yeah, you may be out of the playoff race, but you definitely are able to shit on somebody's day if you squeak out a win. So keep grinding, keep sniping players off the waiver wire, and yeah, let's make it happen. All right, catch everybody later.